Chicago is a city with a sky full of bacon. But would you eat off it? Most of us would feel a little funny about popping urban, industrial Chicago into our mouths. Yet there are people who find sustenance and even wilderness growing in the city. Last fall, I started looking for urban foragers to find out what they find worth eating here. So come back in time with me to Chicago's harvest season. And maybe by the time things start growing again, Chicago will look pretty tasty to you, too.
Right outside my doorstep, I've got all these things growing that you could potentially eat. And chicory flowers are one of them. Coffee comes from Colombia and all these other, exotic places. And right here we've got something that could essentially be harvested, dried, roasted, ground, and drank just like coffee.
Art Jackson is a chef and blogger who cooks at home with things he's foraged around Pilsen.
I grew up about an hour west of Chicago in the country. As kids, we explored back there, and we'd find what appeared to be raspberries to us, and we would just pick them and eat them. And they're wild blackberries. Nobody told us they were okay to eat or anything. We just picked them and ate them. And patch right here was just covered with them. Just these big, beautiful blue flowers and thistles and lamb's quarters, all these different things that were essentially edible. And of course the city, they take practicality into consideration.
So how tall was this here before the city got
to
it?
It was pretty tall. It was, it was up like this, and some of the thistles, they get really tall, It's kind of a reminder of what was here before. Even though we're in this big concrete city, there's still, prairie that wants to come through. Just a couple months ago, I went out and picked whatever nettles I could grab. Didn't cost me anything, didn't have to go to a farmer's market to get them, so I think it's kind of exciting. It's kind of neat.
So what did you make with them?
I made gnocchi with stinging nettles. Most of the purslane that I find looks really hardened. As a cook who looks at things like, tenderness and freshness when it comes to vegetables, I would say this looks really, really good.
Well, let's have a bite.
Well,
this
is a dog. This is a pretty heavy dog area. Our latest discovery was the apple tree right next door. I don't know what kind of apple this is or anything, but they're real pretty. The little, mostly green, but a little blush on them. I asked the folks across the street last night who were watching us try and grab apples. I asked them if they knew who planted this tree. They had no idea. It makes me wonder, what if instead of planting a lot of these ornamental trees, we planted fruit trees all over the city? We'd have free food everywhere. And not just, free food, but we'd have, really good tasting food. These apples are more delicious than any you could buy in the store. The ones in the store have been refrigerated, and, that changes their makeup. It changes, their flavor and everything.
Art opened my eyes to a lot of things growing around me. But a few weeks later, we meet someone who really shows us a Chicago we've never seen or tasted before. Nancy Clem is an artist, a professional gardener, and she gives urban foraging tours.
Walk that way, maybe we can.
We meet her at a stretch of urban wilderness along the river between Roosevelt Road and Chinatown.
Years ago, this was, from what I have told, was a airstrip. There was a group called Environmental Encroachment that used to hang trampolines and hammocks and in the landscape, and they'd have these midnight kind of gymnastic parties that were just really fantastic. There was someone down here that had put mirrors everywhere, so they kind of glinted through the area. It looked like some kind of visual installation. So there's been a lot of things going on here besides many animals and people living down here on a permanent basis. What we're seeing here, all this tall stuff that's going into seed, it's a silver underside. This is mugwort. And I have had ales made from mugwort, and this is what they used to use as a bittering agent before hops. Diana, or Artemis from mythology, she calmed down the Minotaur, who was guarding the labyrinth, with this plant, and that's why it carries her name. This is Artemisia vulgaris, common Artemisia, related to absinthe. So it has some of the same properties of absinthe, but in a lot milder form.
Oh yeah, it's got that
Definitely
astringency.
Yeah. Koreans use this. They take this plant and they grind it up with rice. They make these green herbal rice cakes. They're really, really good.
So mugwort's the common name.
Mugwort's the common name.
Okay.
It's a wort for mug, for the mug. It's something that works for the mug.
Oh, okay.
Mugwort. Does anybody know what this is, or art? So this is in its seed form.
Is this isn't like a dried up milkweed? No.
Queen Anne's lace.
I'm not
It's a
sure.
wild carrot,
Oh wow.
and you can dig up the root earlier in the season before it goes to flower, and it'll be very sweet as a carrot with a little bit more pungency to it. It's where carrots descended from. Yeah, tiny bit. This area has, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, was slated for development. So I've seen the development plans. It's all going to be like on the other side of Roosevelt, very dense high-rise condo development with retail. So they came through and they brush hogged it like crazy. There was some very, very well-established trees here. Plants were in their secondary succession, ecological succession. So this had been undisturbed for about 30 years. And it was pretty amazing, the diversity of plants that were here. At this point, by just brush hogging, they haven't really destroyed anything, but they've knocked it back in terms of there's not the old specimens that were here. But the roots are still there for the most part because they weren't able to grind up everything. Where did he go? Oh, here he goes. This is a little wet. This is going to be very young. This is Doc. Ugh. Not a leaf time of year, but you can get a sense of it. You're pretty brave, Art, so take a little, just a little kind of nibble of that. It's a lot better in the springtime. It's almost like a sorrel taste. It's like sourdough. This is what you're really going for when you're making some medicine, and I just wanted to show you how yellow it was. See how yellow that
wow,
is?
Look at that. Almost like turmeric.
Yeah. Now this is extremely stimulating to your liver. So if you were you had a little binge going on, or if you had been doing a lot of kind of antibiotics or steroids because you had gone through surgery or you had some injury, this is a plant that's going to help clean your liver out.
So you want the leaves when they're young and the roots when they're mature.
Yeah, so in foraging you have the early spring, and that's mostly leaf you're going for. Then as plants go into the summer, you're picking flowers. So if it's at the flower you're after, you're doing that. And then you go into seeds, which include something like berries, because that's, you know, berries are just the fleshy coating on the outside of seeds. And then you're going into roots before you go into the winter again. So you're kind of following where the plant is putting its energy, or when it's a good time to pick. But I made you some coffee.
Awesome.
And it's kind of weak, but smell it. usually make it stronger, but I just didn't have time to steep it as long as I'd like to. It's like I didn't make it last night. But you're welcome. Just it's kind of awkward. I don't think I brought the cup. You're gonna have to drink it like that.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more unctuous than a tea, you know, and it really has a lot of coffee qualities about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
so
nice.
Anyway, that's for you. You want to try some?
Yeah, let's take it.
Mike's like, I want to try some.
I could drink that all day.
That's really nice.
Yeah, I could drink this all
So
day,
what is
too.
it? What are the
Dandelion and burdock, which I'll show you. They're two plants that help your liver and kidneys that are more food-based that you could take in every day. And burdock is known as gobo in Asian cuisine. And it's delicious raw or cooked, but like I roast it and use it for coffee and get it in that way.
Is it the root or?
Yes, the root. And I'll show you that. I'm sure we'll find it. It's one of our pioneers.
It's similar to salsa bean. I was going to help somebody come up with a specialty coffee flavor
Oh
for
yeah.
a competition, and I thought it would be cool to incorporate chicory into the drink somehow.
Uh-huh.
But I was afraid to use the root just because, you know, I've read, you know, from people like you and other people that it tends to absorb a lot of, where it grows, it tends to absorb a lot of toxins and stuff.
Yeah, roots are absorbing toxins. They're also like gathering all those minerals that you want too.
Yeah.
So you just really have to make sure you're picking it from a ground that you can trust, because it is that concentration. So pretty to see that. I feel like cities are really lonely places, and I started finding my solace by going out for walks along train tracks and going into areas like this just to kind of find a quiet, non-human space.
A lot of us take walks, but we don't necessarily nibble along the way. How'd you get started doing that?
I just tapped into my inner monkey. How do you get to know things but by putting them in your mouth and smelling them? And I did a foraging walk with kids, and kids are great. They're just like amazing foragers. They're really close to the ground, and they have no problem sticking anything in their mouths. So I think that's a really basic response of how to get to know something. Yeah, I didn't really think about it. I just started doing it, and it was only about a year later I realized that I was sticking things in my mouth, and I was getting to know them, and I was starting to cook them and introduce them to other people before I realized that I was foraging. I didn't even know I was doing it, really. So milkweed's pretty amazing. The sprouts are like asparagus coming out of the ground, and the flowers are like broccoli, like a really sweet broccoli. And then the pods, when they're greener than this, right when they're first setting up, they're like okra. But I personally don't eat it very often because it's the sole food of the monarch butterfly, and so I'm interested in habitat over food. Got garlic mustard, which is a spring forage, right?
That's making me hungry.
This is a bane of all woodland restoration projects right now, but it's actually very good to make into pesto or just to mix in with like eggs or potatoes, or it's just really nice.
It's spinachy looking leaf.
You know what? That's weird. I don't know what that is. I'm always surprised when I don't know what something is. One way I test to see if I can eat something, which I wouldn't recommend most people doing, but one of the ways I do it is just kind of hold it. You believe it or not, you can intuit these things. You can sense like, oh, maybe I shouldn't get near this plant. If I don't recognize it, smell it, and then I would just take a little bit. I'm gonna hold it towards the front of my mouth and taste it. It tastes really mild. I'm sure it's safe, but I'm gonna identify it at this point. So I'm kind of thinking about characteristics and the fact that it's in the shade, moist shade. And then I'll go back and look at a plant book. Wild grapes are pretty much everywhere, and you'll see them kind of almost like kudzuing, carpeting trees that just kind of grow over them. So this is one of the wild fruits that I collect from and make vinegars and wine from. So this is honey locust, and this is a really common street tree. and it's in the bean family, which means it's fixing nitrogen. So it's gathering nitrogen and it's making it available for the other plants around it. So it's fixing nitrogen in the soil just like beans do. And I kind of want you to, so inside you have the beans, which I don't use, but you kind of want to go after that goo.
Yeah, like a
So-
tamarind almost.
So do a little chew on the goo. Just chew on the goo. Kind of squish it out.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And then nuts.
Did it squish out?
It's it's like mango.
You have to try this.
Okay.
This is a look-alike plant, and so I'm not talking about it.
Okay.
I try to stay away from things that are look-alikes because I don't want people who are beginning to distinguish one plant from another enthusiastically go out there and collect the wrong thing. It's just as important to know your poisonous plants as it is your edibles.
So this is all supposed to be developed through here, right?
Yeah, you see that new glass structure that's part of it? This is all the same development on either side of Roosevelt. It's gonna be a lot of units, a lot more retail, and God, if people get foraging, maybe they'd stop shopping. Because I feel like shopping's so much about that. It's about trying to find something and that kind of discovery of that treasure, and it's a real ancient, I feel like it's a really ancient impulse of ours, so maybe they could redirect it into foraging.
So where did you find them roughly?
I won't tell
You
you.
don't have to tell us the place, but how do you look for apples and pears?
I look for apples and pears in the beginning of the season. You know, it's easy to tell a plant when it's in flower, and then you just keep that in mind and you get to the fruit before anybody else does. If you wait till it turns into fruit, other people will recognize it. Other people will never recognize a pear tree, or all of a sudden like, oh, it's a pear tree.
In the next Sky Full of Bacon, we go west, near Galena, to meet Oriana, the exotic fruits lady at Green City Market. And check out past Sky Full of Bacon podcasts on subjects ranging from local eating to Texas barbecue.